At the end of the day, an employment relationship is a relationship between two people, and you can define it in a lot of different ways, pretty much any way that's lawful. And so at the beginning of the employment relationship, you have to determine the terms by which you'll hire the person, naturally. So specifically, employers have to decide issues like whether an individual is being hired as an employee or as an independent contractor. So we don't talk about it here as much, but in my course about independent contractors, you'll see that independent contractor is defined as a very, very narrow thing. And if someone is considered an independent contractor, then you won't necessarily have to be involved with paying taxes on their behalf or or buying insurance for them, or potentially providing them benefits, or tracking their time, or anything like that. But as soon as you hire someone as an employee, there are a lot of laws that are pro-employee that make you responsible for all of those things. So the question between whether or not an individual is being hired as an employee or a contractor is a really, really big one, because contractors save you money and employees cost you money. You also have to ask the question about whether or not you are an employee. You probably are, assuming that you have a company that you work for. That even if it's the company that you own yourself and you're the only person who works for it. So, really look into whether or not you're an independent contractor or not, and the other course will help you do that. If the employee will be employed on an at-will basis or be given a fixed term of employment. So in the next videos, we'll learn what at-will employment is, but you'll need to figure out whether or not you want to ensure that this person is locked into working for you for a specific period of time or until a specific triggering event happens, or whether or not you want this person to be fluid. So if you want this person to be able to leave whenever they want, and you want to be able to remove this person from your business whenever you want. And so the vast majority of employment relationships in the United States are at will, meaning that someone can leave at any time you want, or someone can be removed at any time you want. But a fixed term of employment is useful, particularly if you know that you're getting a really great deal on someone and you need them to be at the company for a certain period of time. For example, you know that this person is the only person who's going to be able to do something or be able to train these people. So you need to make sure that these people at the end of the day are going to be there till the project is done or the people are trained. What types of screening methods will be used? And so there are lots of laws regarding how people are interviewed and what types of questions you can ask. There's lots of different laws about doing background checks on employees. There are lots of laws about doing credit checks on employees, or potential employees. There are lots of restrictions on how much you can go to someone's Facebook profile and look at what their marital status is and things like that. And so all of these things can provide helpful information. For example, a credit report can tell you if they're a deadbeat. A background check can tell you if someone's a criminal. An interview can tell you how well you'll be able to get along with these people. But these things also have issues that you need to know, and you need to keep yourself within compliance of these laws. And so much more on that later. How the employee will be compensated. So literally you can compensate an employee in any way except for you need to follow certain minimum standards. For example, both the federal government in the United States nationally has a minimum wage, and then each state typically has a minimum wage. And so a state minimum wage cannot go below the federal minimum wage, but state minimum wages often go above the federal minimum wage, because the federal minimum wage is literally the minimal amount in this country that we expect people to be paid. And so individual states can choose based on for example, the cost of living in that state, how much is correct for that state. And so compensation doesn't just have to be hourly compensation. For some employees, it could be a salary. Not all employees can get a salary. So within this, we're talking about things like exempt and non-exempt employees. These are going to be topics that we touch on in a lot more detail later on, but just know that some employees, the types of which are non-exempt, have to be paid hourly no matter what. And so they have to track their hours, and every hour they work, they need to be paid. And for exempt employees, i.e. people who are exempt from the minimum wage requirements, they can be paid a yearly salary that has nothing to do with how many hours they do or don't work. And so they could work less hours and get than minimum wage, less hours than 40 hours a week and get their salary, or they can work many more hours than 40 hours a week and still get their salary. So compensation also deals with commissions. For example, salespeople often get a piece of every sale that they make in some industries. Compensation also has to do with bonuses. So at the year end, or at the end of a month, or at the end of a quarter, oftentimes certain types of employees can get extra compensation based on how well they're doing. And so we'll talk about bonuses and commissions and all those other types of things in terms of compensation as the course goes on. Finally, what types of agreements they'll ask employees to sign to protect their employees' intellectual property. So as someone who probably runs a startup, is a independent digital creator, the type of person who I work with and the type of person who listens to my courses, intellectual property is probably your biggest asset. And so if you're a web designer, web developer, photographer, if you run a media business, intellectual property is what is valuable about what you do, and your own personal brand and the brand of your products and services is your biggest asset. And so typically, as a default rule, you own your employees' intellectual property, but you need to make sure that all of these things are set in stone, and that your employees, if they create something with your money on your equipment and things like that, that you own that work. And so this is a really basic overview of the different types of terms of the employment relationship that you might have with someone. And so this information will all be a springboard to then talk about these in much, much greater detail. All right, thanks a lot.